Well, hello there. You're listening to Profoundish. My name is Alex. Today, Weston and I are just going to be kind of chillaxing, talking. Does anyone still say chillaxing, or did I just completely age myself? Either way, it's just going to be a chill conversation between two buddies today. We're going to be talking about how we creatively write, writer's block, Hogwarts Legacy, and how a lot of PC games don't seem to be well optimized. So come join us for this nice, easygoing conversation. This is Profoundish. Yeah, I thought we could just do a cash talk. It's been a long week, so I just want to talk cash.
A cash money.
Cashmere.
We're gonna be dropping all of the business advice. We're gonna teach you how to be an entrepreneur. We're gonna talk crypto.
Let's talk crypto. Well, if we talk crypto, people are gonna think that our account's been hacked, because that seems to be the go-to account hack. Is like there's two people that I subscribe to on YouTube in the last 2 months or so that have had their channels hacked, and they're like medium-sized channels. I'm talking 100,000 plus subs.
Yeah,
and both channels have been hacked, and they both were completely refaced to like crypto crap. And their subscriber base was starting to drop and stuff. But it was just weird that like two people I subscribed to, seemingly very different channels, both got it pretty quick. So that seems to be the thing.
They must have been hit by like the same scam, like some sort of email scam or something, where they probably thought that they were communicating with like YouTube or something, and nope, it wasn't. When the reason why the scam's gonna be like crypto related is because crypto's already like basically a scam by itself. Like it's just It's just so my brother and I were talking about NFTs the other day, and it's just like every which way you look at it, left, right, upside down, it's money laundering. It's just no one uses it for good things. It's only nefarious.
That is true, yeah.
It's only nefarious. Crypto on a wider scale, there's arguments to be had about like basically a digital currency, but not NFTs. There's no way to look at it. It's just basically laundering money.
Are NFTs still as prominent as they were?
No.
I'm kind of out of the loop. I didn't think so. They kind of seem to have come and gone.
They
at least in terms
crashed
of the
hard.
Public eye. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I remember like there was like these big corporations were dipping their toes in it for a short while. Like
because it was like, one, if you're going to make any money on these like new ideas, you want to get in on it immediately, because that's where all the money's going to be. So that's what happened. You had all these corporations or whatever seeing a potential in it, and so jumping in it as fast as possible, as messy as possible, and trying to get out with whatever they could. So,
yeah. Hey, Weston.
Yeah, what's up?
I'm going to say this because we haven't said it in a long time on the show, like on the show itself, not our intros. Welcome to Profoundish, everybody. Welcome. We don't say that very much during the show itself.
We cold open. We don't do an introduction. Open. We just go.
If you're a Patreon supporter, which you should be if you haven't, or if you aren't already, sorry, not if you haven't, we do cold ends. It's really fun. Yeah. We do cold endings there. We do cold opens here. So check us out there. We just got done talking about why we think our podcast may be cursed. If you want to learn more about that, you should go.
Go follow the saga over on Patreon. Our Patreon posts are a little bit behind from the regular posts, so I'm not sure by the time this episode comes out which Patreon story is actually coming out, but go follow the saga. We have a whole line of computer-related stories and how this podcast has cursed us in many ways.
And yet here we are. We come back every week. Here to do it again. We just turn the other cheek is what we do here. No, Weston, I think we're going to do a little cash talk today. I thought it'd be fun just to kind of catch up and just hang out. We've both been busy.
Very busy.
So it's nice just to kind of slow down for an hour and just kind of talk. I wanted to bring up, I hopped onto Facebook the other day, and my whole life changed. But this is the truth. I hopped onto Facebook, and I went to the feed, I guess, whatever it's called, the news feed.
Sure.
And the first thing to pop up for me was your post about your little poetry book.
Oh, that's right, because the last time you and I talked about that on the podcast, I had not posted anything anywhere about it yet. That's right.
So that's pretty exciting. that you kind of announced it to the world a little bit.
I'll show it to everybody on camera. I have a little poetry book. It's this one right here. It's called Smiling for the Sky, Haiku-Style Poetry About Heartache. Those of you that are watching the podcast on Spotify and YouTube just saw me have to look at my own book to remember what I called it. That's what it's called. Don't feel bad. You can find it on Amazon. It's available on Amazon Kindle. It's available as paperback. And if you happen to have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free on that. It's 83 haiku-like poems about, as it says, heartache.
There's some stuff that makes you mentally chew a little bit that he's written that I've started to read. I've read a few. I like it.
That's the idea. Like, and it's hard being the author of it because they're haiku-like, so they're really short. So it's sometimes really hard as the author to be like, well, I'm trying to like get a feeling across or an idea or a moment across, right? But I also want the reader to be able to like connect it to their own lives and like ponder that moment for a little bit, like any poem does, right? You know, you got to think about it a little bit. It's not like it's difficult to read mine. Like I'm not using elevated speech or anything like that. But the idea is like, because they're so short, it would be really easy to just churn through them all as fast as possible and like, you know, read the entire thing in a very short amount of time. But the idea is to try to take it a little slow too. But so it's hard as the author to know if that's effective, like if people are doing that, if you know. But poetry is for anybody to do whatever they want with. So
well, and I can kind of relate to that on a songwriting perspective. It's kind of the same thing. You can write something very specific to you and your experience, but that's the beauty of any sort of written art form, is that it doesn't matter even if you're almost blatantly trying to convey an experience, a specific mood or tone. Somebody can still completely take it another direction from their own experience. That's the beauty of, I think, written art. I was going to ask you this though. Side note, you said you forgot part of the title or whatever. I want to ask you an honest question because this could open up to something else interesting. If I were to like pick a random poem out of there, a random haiku out of there, right?
Yeah.
And I like gave you the first line. Out of any of them, do you think you'd be able to finish the rest of it off? Yeah.
Probably not.
Because there's 80 what? I mean, I can't remember the number.
83.
83. So like out of the 83, I was just curious if you really remember each one that you've written at this point. Or like if it started to jog your memory, if you started to read it.
I don't know. That would be a fun challenge to see if I can remember how I went with it, because they're so short, so you have to be choosy about your word choice. So I might be able to get pretty close if I can remember what the moment was, but no, I don't have them actually memorized. I can't just start reciting it or anything like that. No,
I get it, because I used to get a lot of, you know what I was about to say, I used to get a lot of crap, but really it was just me giving myself crap. Where when I would perform on Jam and Chats, I'd do a lot of my original music. Even live, when I'd play live here in town from time to time, I get my own words. I forget the lyrics to my own songs. I will remember the song that I've listened to for 25 years now, right? Because it's just ingrained in my DNA, basically.
Right.
But then the song that I wrote 2 years ago that I might perform frequently, even though I have a strong connection to it, I'll still forget half the lines half the time. It's a weird thing.
When you're the author of a work, of songwriting or a poem or whatever it might be, you also remember all of the lines that could have been. Everyone else has heard the song that you finished. You've heard the song that you finished, the song that you scrapped, the song that you half finished, the song that you changed course, the different word choices you made. So you're actually contending with more lyrics in your head than the average listener might.
Yeah, I was going to say the interesting thing too, I know with my process, when I write a song, a lot of the times if I have the melodic idea, the musical idea, I'll just like grab my phone and I'll like hit record on the voice recording app or whatever. And then I'll just kind of lay down something so I can remember it later.
Yeah.
And it's funny because then what I'll do is I'll finish writing the song and then I'll re-record just on my phone again a full demo. Kind of complete if I like the melody. So I remember what the melody sounds like. Words could change, but I got the melody. And it's funny how what I'll do usually, this has happened for a few songs that are actually officially released, the melody still over time, because it takes months usually for me to completely finish a song because I'll bounce a bunch around at the same time. And by the time I'm done recording the song, right, months later after writing it, the melody has still changed a little bit. And even though I already had a recording set, this is what I want, right? Just I would stop looking at it anymore. I'd stop listening to that as a reference and just continue my process. And then it becomes, yet again, sometimes not drastically, but still I'd consider a different melody, which is fine. I guess that's how it was supposed to be completed if I'm happy with it at the end. But it's just kind of weird how if I don't keep referencing, it will still slowly evolve.
Shift. That's how things like shake out. You develop an idea over time. So you might stray from the original idea, but that doesn't, like, your original idea isn't inherently better than what you're developing. It's just what got the gears started.
Right. Oh, here's a good question actually about writing for you. Have you ever had an idea that you wanted to work so bad, but you just couldn't get it to work? Like you would try, and maybe it would kind of put you in like a writer's block state. Like I gotta get this idea or this line to fit, and I just can't do it. I've had this issue myself. I'm curious if you've ever had that, and you've eventually had to just kind of toss it to the side.
Yeah. I think anyone that writes anything is going to have that, where you have an idea in your head and you're like trying to get it on paper and you just can't quite get it to look right or sound right. Mm-hmm. And for me, I usually kind of power through it in some way. Like if you can't figure out, I'm someone who like, I will take a long couple minutes to think about what I'm going to write, then I write it out. So like my process is I'm staring at like the blinking cursor on the screen, right? And in my head, I'm like formulating sentences over and over and over again and changing them. And then eventually I'm happy with a sentence and then I move forward with it. And then ideally you follow that train, you get that thread and you just keep writing sentence after sentence after sentence and you get in that like flow until you get stumped again and then you stop. So sometimes if you're stuck, you're like, I cannot figure out what this is supposed to say. You just start typing something to get you to the next thing. So it's like, okay,
right, I
know where this needs to go. So you just start putting things out, see where that goes. And then like, okay, I can go back and start over if I want. So like, I know, okay, and I now know where I need to get to. I need to back up, go back to this part that I was stuck at, redo this, get to where I need to be. I don't do that too terribly often. Usually I kind of just give up, walk away, and come back.
Yeah,
instead.
That's good too. Yeah.
But I'm trying to be more I'm trying to be more like the first thing, where it's like write something stupid if it has to be stupid, and then come back to it and rewrite it. I'm trying to get better at doing that, because my method of like, I'm stumped, I'm just going to walk away and come back, while that can be beneficial, if you don't come back right away, like I'm going to put this down and I'll come back to it. You get sidetracked, life happens, whatever. It's a week later, you sit back down. I don't remember what the heck I'm talking about.
Right.
What was my idea? Where was I going with this?
Yeah. I know you've told me before about your writing process. I think when we did your official like poetry episode like a long time ago. And I remember you talked about that, and I thought that does like your process usually of you formulate, here it is, boom, type it out, then you keep going. Because that does kind of go against the grain of what a lot of people say when they're giving advice for writing. It's like, just get the ideas out, and then you can revise later. And I know, once again, from my perspective, obviously writing long form is different than songwriting, but it's a similar thing. It's like I have the idea that I want to share, but like you so badly, especially when you're incorporating the musical element, you just want it to hit right now. You want the words to be right, because I got this beautiful melody. I want the words to just hit it. The thing is that that usually doesn't happen, and sometimes it does, but other times it's like I just got to get the idea out so then I can find the phrase that hits later. But it's tough. Writer's block is tough. But my biggest advice that I received to get out of kind of writer's block the most was that exact thing. It was, I don't care how stupid it is. If you've got a general idea, just get words out and finish it. You can always change it. Just finish it. So a lot of the songs I know on Songs from Sangamon Street were songs that were written within just a day or two. Like generally speaking. There was revisions
like
for
draft
weeks and
one.
weeks.
Yeah.
Draft
one
right?
was out day one, but now you can work on it.
Exactly. And for me, that was a huge accomplishment at the time, was being able to get draft one done, right? 3 verses, 2 choruses, a bridge, whatever I needed that song needed. And I found myself, as I was really in the flow of songwriting, I haven't written a song in a while, but like when I was in that flow and writing, within about a year, I wrote, maybe about a year and a half, I wrote over 50 songs. And they were just coming out, like finishing them too. And I mean, really finishing. Lyrics were done within a matter of just a week. I would go back. Once you get in the flow, like you talk about too, especially, I don't mean just in one session, but in just making it a part of your routine, your creative routine, your life, it becomes like just a muscle, and you're just using that muscle, and it's no different than just anything else. It becomes a real part of your routine. It's really cool. I want to get back in it because now I'm kind of stepped out of songwriting. I kind of stepped out of it after that album came out because I took a lot of work and effort, and I just kind of got tired. But I'm ready again. But now I'm sitting down at this thing. Let me get my hand over there. There you go. And I have. Wes, and I'm not lying when I tell you, and you're probably the same in terms of like little ideas or lines or phrases. I've got well over, I'd say at least 100 separate song, like parts of songs done. And like significant parts, maybe like a chorus is done, or I have a bunch of words, or I just have like this really awesome, there's some that are just, the full song is done, but with no words. And like there's like over 100, could be up to 150, just all on my phone or somewhere in my notebook, like lyrically and stuff. And it's almost daunting. It's like, do I go back to these things? I put these to paper, or I put it to recording for this reason. But now it's like, I don't remember the space I was in. Do I really need to know the space I was in? It can become something different now. There's this whole thing.
It's like the creative junk drawer. You have a junk drawer of all these creative ideas, and you kept this piece, this thing, and you threw it in the drawer because you're like, I might need that later. Now you're digging through your junk drawer, and you're like, what the hell is this? So like now you're looking for a use for it.
And I will say the creative junk drawer, maybe you've experienced this too. It's been most useful for me when I had something that was almost finished and needed that something. And that's usually when I would go to the junk drawer. So I would have a song, I'd have like the verses and a chorus, but I needed an extra musical element that I was missing. So then I'd go through on my phone all the recordings, and this happened once or twice on my album too, actually. I kind of Frankensteined a piece of another, like there's a little, once again, the creative junk drawer, I love that phrase. I pulled from that, and that ended up being the exact thing that this other song that was almost done was missing. So that for me has been really helpful, but just trying to write a song from scratch again and pulling from that junk drawer has proved to be a little bit more of a challenge. Not that I can't do it, but it's instead of it being an element added to something, it's kind of the starting grounds for something, and that can be kind of difficult at times. But it's fun. I'm trying to get back into songwriting, though. That's my long story short. I'm ready again. Ready to write more songs.
I look forward to it personally. I'm looking forward to your next album dropping in just a few months when you just go on a full blown
in July 2024
coffee spill cleaning panic again, but this time you just write a whole album instead.
You know that there's got to be some sort of line or influenced by that now. I'm telling you. I always throw little like realistic lines. You know this because you know my personal life better than most people who heard that album, and it's like, and you even asked me, is this about so-and-so? Or, you've done that a couple times. Right. It's like, so you're going to hear some sort of random line in one of my songs that is a true line about myself, and it's going to be about spilling coffee in a computer or something. Which I'm
already, there's like, I'm an alliteration guy, right? So I'm just like, I'm imagining like a song, coffee and computer, right? I'm imagining like a tumultuous relationships, like chaos, like a cup thrown into a computer or something like that. You got that chaos.
There you go, yeah.
Cup. I could see it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, you were,
I'm already formulating the line.
I'm thinking about it too. Oh, man. We should definitely do another, we should write another song together and try and redeem ourselves after the Me, You, and the Pumpkin, or whatever it was called.
Yeah, the Pumpkin one didn't hit quite like You, Me, and Earl.
No, it's
Earl and the Girl. Whatever
it's
it was
something
called.
Earl. I think it's Me, Earl, and the Girl.
That's it.
Which is
Me,
so
Earl,
good.
the Girl. that one was just special.
Well,
I don't do any songwriting, but I do every now and again come up with like a couple of lyrics in my head and I write them down to maybe turn into a poem later. But I don't usually come back around to it, which is a shame.
Well, if you ever don't know what to do with them, throw them my way. Maybe I could do something.
Well, I got one I wrote today.
Really?
Yeah, I'll come up with it. It's just like a couplet. Like I'll just come up with like 2 lines, but something about it I'll just be like, ooh, that sounds good though. But what do I do with it? And this one, I don't remember what I was just at work. The lines are, and I'm going to try to remember how I had it laid out. The lines are, I hate that you're all sober and that I'm not invited over.
Ooh. So
it was just like, I hate that you're all sober and that I'm not invited over. That was kind of like the vibe I was going for. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell that is, but I'm just going to write it down. That was just my brain doing something in the background.
I mean, that actually sounds like this is no means an insult, because it sounds like a pop song lyric.
A little bit. It's a little poppy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like that. Ooh.
I know.
Thinking now. That could also be, maybe you won't hear it, but I do. That could also be country. That's also not necessarily a bad thing.
I think you could twist that. I mean, it's not like there's a lot there. I think you can twist that in a lot of different ways. But the lyric, just those 2 lines came to me today at work randomly. I'm like, I'm going to write that down because
write it down.
I like how it sounds. It just sounds good.
I've got so many more of those, just like little lines that I've written down. And now I carry a little notebook with me everywhere I go. So now it's even easier to just go. And I remember I had an old coworker at my old job a few years ago, and she said this line, and it wasn't, well, I'll take things that people say and write it down and go, ooh, that would be a good song. But she didn't say this just to say it. She actually said, she's not a musician, but she was like, I've got what I think would be a good song idea. I'm like, okay, well, what is it? Maybe I'll make it into a song. I'll steal your words. She's like, I don't care. She told me, and it was, and I like it a lot. It's, you're almost better than being alone. Which would be
better than being alone.
Which is
like
if you
that would be really definitely
good.
That's definitely not like a chorus line, but that's definitely in the verse, right?
Oh yeah, but it's like, what a horrible thing to say. Like, you're almost better than being alone.
Yeah, that's so hard.
I like it.
What's heartbreaking about that is that's absolutely a story about wanting something to work with someone, but you know it's not.
Yeah.
Oh, that breaks my heart
good.
already.
I know, it's such a great line.
That belongs in a poem about heartache.
Hey, there's a challenge. There's a challenge for you. You can take that line if you want, because I've had it for 3 years and I've never done anything with it.
It's been that long.
So yeah, it's been a long time. So if you can come up with something with it, you're almost better than being alone. You should.
I'd have to write. I guess I'd have to write it down. I'll have to re-listen to this episode to remember it. But like, I'm on a different project right now, so I'm not doing well. As I say, I'm not doing heartache poems right now, but that's not actually strictly true. So, but
well, what's your project now? Can you share?
I've got a few projects going on. I've got my next poetry project in the works, but that's not going to be out for a while. That's a next year thing. And then I've got a fiction. A serial that I'm working on. More details about that later. This is in the realm of like fantasy and fiction, that so a little bit more long form that I've been wanting to do for a while. Actually, talking about the process of writing, I have like 4 paragraphs of it that I've rewritten like 12 times, and that's all I've done on paper. As I keep rewriting, I'm like, I have to get the vibe right.
Sure, yeah.
Or I can't move on, because we were talking about like just keep going and get something out and come back and revise. And like, I can't move on until it feels right.
I understand that though. I do.
So that's the thing that's the next thing that I'm actually working on now that I'm done. I finished this poetry book that I did. And then the other one that I'm going to get more serious about this coming summer, hopefully once the serial is moving along, is the short story that we started on our one of our October episodes, where we Alex and I shared spooky stories that we wrote for each other. And something about mine I really liked a lot, and I thought it would make it for a really good short story. So I'm turning it ideally into a longer story than it was when we shared it on the podcast, and turn it into a little bit more of a something.
I know a little behind the curtain with that one, everybody, was that Weston was actually, he's been pushing for that episode since our first Halloween doing it, and I was the one who kind of said, let's wait. It's a lot. That's going to take a lot of time and energy and effort. And let's just take other stories. And I said, we'll do it next year. And I was kind of trying to be like that parent, hoping that my kid would forget.
That I would forget.
And then he didn't forget. And it ended up being really fun. And it was a great exercise for me because this was before VGM Quest. So I wasn't really writing anything long form. And it was a great exercise, but I also realized how difficult that is, which is why I structured it the way I did. I structured it like the story from before. It was like entries or whatever, like journal entries. It was easier for me to structure but then comparing it to Weston's, and I was happy with it. But then like yours, I mean, you're such a writer. Like it felt like a writer wrote it. Mine felt like Alex Duquette wrote it, which is cool. I that's fine. But you're a writer, and that makes a difference. So like I think that was really cool. So I'm excited to hear it because it ends, and then.
It ends very strangely. We won't spoil it for anyone that wants to go back and listen to that. I don't remember what that episode's called, but so just listen to all the October ones from 2023 October. Just listen to all of them. And we've got one of them, we tell each other spooky stories. Both of our stories were good. Alex, I think you were a little hard on yourself because you were just a little outside your wheelhouse. That's true. Which I don't normally write horror, so I was a little bit outside mine too. But I think it was like you said, it was a fun exercise. We've done that, and we've done our impromptu poems and songs and stuff. So it's like I think these little writing exercises are just a lot of fun to do. And it's not like it's not like it has to be the most polished thing ever. It's about making it and putting it out there. So
and let me tell you what, it really kind of primed me up to do a project that I was already thinking about at that time, but I didn't start yet, which was, or actually probably did by that point. But anyway, VGM Quest, right?
Yeah.
For anyone listening who don't know what that is, basically, it's long-form, in-depth analysis and kind of retrospectives of video game soundtracks. I've done a couple of those now, and I remember that the first one I wrote, it was, because it's obviously videos like that, you got to script out first, and that's like a 32-minute video or whatever it is. That's a lot. And
I was impressed.
I was honestly impressed with myself. I'm going to be honest. I did not think it would end up being as long as it was, and I found myself thinking like cutting a few things out. Anyway, it's so difficult. Even like for me, it was difficult at least to write like that because I had an idea. I even had the theme. I knew how I wanted to wrap it up. You'd think because of that, I kind of would have had at least a decent time writing it. For me, the easiest part in those is writing about the songs themselves. So how I kind of structure these is that I talk about it, I talk about what it means to me, or what it represents to me or whatever, or I have some sort of kind of underlying theme I like to do just kind of for fun to make it a little more interesting. And then I get into the meat and potatoes of it, which is just the songs themselves, and I just musical mumbo jumbo talking about the songs. That part's easy because it's like I know because what I do is I use the overall theming of what I want it to be about, like the overall story of the soundtrack, to then kind of inform and influence how I write about the songs. So like that's kind of easy. So like, for example, I talked about in the Donkey Kong Country soundtrack video, I talked about kind of how it's all about the vibes. And I kind of like to use that word because everyone uses the word vibes now and stuff. And what I basically was just trying to say was that the songs are, especially for a soundtrack of the era, very expressive, very sensational, very, it's just there's a lot going on for such an old, this kind of 16-bit soundtrack. But I use that vibes, and he was really focused on emotion and feeling, and I use that to inform how I write the songs. But the first part I talked about, listening to a soundtrack, a video game soundtrack, and not just analyzing it musically, but trying to find the way that I want to write about the overarching theme of it is difficult. Because I can listen to a soundtrack and go, oh, this sounds like this and this and this. I can tell that the composer's trying to evoke this feeling. That's the easy part. For me, though, I want to add more. For example, in the Zelda one I did, it was all about how the way that the soundtrack's constructed, it kind of takes you on an adventure of your own, right? Like without playing the game, the music is your adventure. You don't have to play the adventure to be in the adventure. But like getting to that point is the hard part for me. is kind of finding that overarching theme, which I'm assuming is probably similar with at least some, or with books. At least we uncover those later as they're written, like great popular novels of any era. It's always a matter of, as we analyze them later in book clubs or in classes or whatever, we always talk about the overarching themes of these books. And maybe sometimes those are intentional, sometimes they're not. Sometimes we find the theming, right? I don't know. But anyway, that's always been difficult for me, is finding. But also it's different because I'm writing it like an analytic thing. I'm not really writing like a novel.
Right.
So that's also different, but.
That's what I found with one. I'm still impressed with what you managed to do with VGM Quest, because you found a theme. Like you had a story or a narrative or a theme or something that you wanted to say about all of it, and that's how you like packaged it. You weren't just like, here is song 1, and this is what I think about it. Here is song 2, and here's what I think about it. Here is song 3, and here's what you actually themed the entire video so that the whole thing tells a story. That was really fun. And like you said, that was hard. I believe it, because it was really well done.
Thank you.
And that's what it is currently a shelved project. You remember I was working on a video game essay.
Yes.
It's shelved.
Oh.
No, don't get excited.
Okay.
It's shelved right now. It's not done. It's shelved right now because I started writing other stuff.
Which is fine.
Yeah, I say don't.
It's like our old joke.
I'll get back to it.
Yes. No.
Because I started trying to write for Battle Hunter, a game that I want to write about, just as like a goof. It's an old game that I loved as a kid that really objectively isn't that fantastic of a game. It's a cheap budget game that I've just loved as a kid. And I wanted to write about it because it's this weird niche, just really strange passion of mine. So I'm like, okay, I want to write about this. So I'm like working on a video game essay, and I've never done that before. And as I'm trying to write, I'm like, what the hell am I trying to say about Battle Hunter?
Right.
I'm not reviewing the game. I can discuss its merits and its flaws in the video, but I'm not reviewing the game. It's a PlayStation 1 game. No one needs my review in 2024 for a game no one is going to play today. No one's doing that. So it's like, I'm not writing a review. I'm not just trying to say, I like game. It's like, what am I trying to say about this? And for me, it's going to be like the personal story to it, just like more or less what elements of it formulated my gaming history, like what I enjoy doing, what I like playing, like how basically any of these games that you play as a kid sets a path, a road for what you're going to enjoy as an adult. And especially for developers, like people that go into games development, the weird niche games that aren't necessarily objectively good end up being what inspire you to do X, Y, Z in the future. So that's like the story I'm trying to go for, but I don't know how to tell that yet. And I'll have to come back to it. So like I respect that idea that you've accomplished with VGM Quest. Sure,
yeah. Well, I appreciate you, especially of all people, saying that means a lot. So I know, like with yours, I know you're shelving it, but one day you'll get to it. I know that. And I know that interweaving, are you going to try and kind of interweave that?
I've got the game. It's right here. This is the case, my PlayStation 1 case.
Look at that.
It's real. I got the disc inside. I got the manual. I'm just showing it off for people that want to see it.
I miss the days of manuals, man. I miss it. I never cared then, but now I care.
Well, back in the day, we didn't know they would be a thing of the past.
I know.
One day.
What I was going to say that, so with yours, you're not going to review it, but I'm assuming you're going to talk about it, obviously.
Like, yeah.
You have that overall theme of like, how playing these, these informative games in your youth really kind of sets you on a path, all that. But I'm assuming you're going to find ways to kind of interweave that with why you do like the game, what the game does, and that sort of thing, and kind of at least go over the basic stuff, I'm assuming. Not review it per se, give your opinions on it. I mean, you can, I guess, but...
Yeah, no, I for sure, because it is, the video itself is absolutely about Battle Hunter, but it's about interweaving my narrative into that video about Battle Hunter that makes it special, or an essay, as opposed to, like, I'm going to put air quotes on it, just a review, so to speak.
Right.
So that's the goal. And I don't know when I'm going to get back to it, but eventually.
I know a huge inspiration for why I did originally what for VGM Quest it was going to be reviews. It wasn't going to be what it became. But then I started to write, and I realized I really kind of liked the direction it was going. My big influences, you might be familiar with these guys or not. They wouldn't be in your ecosystem because they're usually more like Nintendo based for their video essays. But they do. But there's one guy he got really big. King K. He got really big for doing video essays on Zelda specifically. So of course, you know me, I watched all of those. And that was back around a time, this was, 6-7 years ago now. It was before I moved to Tennessee. And I remember that was kind of my first around the time of my first exposure to like the concept of a video essay, at least in that style of, because he did that. He talks about the games, but then he would also kind of take breaks and tie his life in from that time period. And then he would go back to the game again. And then it's so like I was heavily inspired by that. Another one is Liam Triforce. You hear Triforce in the name, so he did Zelda too, but he did a lot of other games as well, at any genre and any system. But similar thing. He adds a real personal element to his video essays about games. And he's got a great way with words that I really appreciate too. So like those were both huge influences. I've seen other game or video essays too on all kinds of topics, not just games, but that's what made me think. I realized that these guys that I watch that do these 45-hour-long, sometimes, like I think the Breath of the Wild one was like almost 2 hours long, of course, because it's such a big-ass game. It was like a 2-hour-long like video essay, but all of these guys barely touch on the music. They spend maybe 10 minutes talking out of a 2-hour video, talking about, oh, the music is... It makes me feel this way and this way. And I'm thinking, I can bring that unique element of kind of just taking just that element and just expound upon that. And anyway, but I wanted to give those guys kind of a shout out because they were a huge influence on me as to why I formatted it the way, I guess, that I did.
Yeah, I remember you talking about how people don't really talk about the music in a lot of these games. And For one, I kind of get it. You know, if you're playing a game, you think about the gameplay, story, and narrative, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Usually in these reviews, music will be maybe mentioned or it'll be a footnote. Mm-hmm. If music does something really well, it'll get talked about like, oh, what a banger soundtrack or something like that. But you don't really get into the meat and potatoes of like what makes the soundtrack work and stuff like that that you're trying to do with VGM Quest. And I remember you bringing that up to me. You mentioned that. I forget at what point if you were already making your episode or had already. I don't remember I just remember you were telling me about that. And I remember my first concern was, I wonder if there's a reason no one talks about music. Is it because like YouTube's going to kill you as soon as you start like uploading music? So I was like, maybe that's a part of it. But now that I've seen you make VGM Quest, it's like, it's really cool that you can do that. Again, hopefully YouTube's chill about it and you don't run into too many behind the scenes issues, because I know that can be a nightmare. But
I know. Well, especially if I keep doing Nintendo stuff, which I'm veering off from after my next video. But I think you're right. There is a gap there in the discussion, and I think if you can continue to like fill that gap and talk about these massively long videos, to just think that you did a whole half an hour video essay on just the soundtrack without touching on the game like basically at all. You know, it's like the opposite thing, and it's so good that you could do that. I actually went in with that intention too. I went in with the intention of, I'm not here to talk about the game, right? I might mention at the beginning, oh, this is an influential video game that, you know, whatever. But besides that, that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to talk about how it ties into the gameplay. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm talking about the music. And here's the thing. You talk about the gap. That was what I was trying to do, is kind of fill that gap, because there's two sides of this. I'm also in the YouTube world of video game music theory. That's a thing. There's a whole subset of YouTube videos, 8-bit music theory. There's another guy that I watch, can't think of his name right now, where they go, I'm going to talk about this video game song for 10 minutes and break it down and tell you why it's awesome. So like that exists, but that's for like the super hardcore music theory, like
nerds.
Exactly. So like I'm into that crap, but like the average Joe who maybe appreciates music but doesn't understand music to that deep of a level wouldn't watch a video like that. They wouldn't get what they're watching. So what I was trying to do was not only kind of bridge that gap of a lack of content about kind of what I'm doing, but also bridge that gap from both ends of that spectrum of I'm not just completely saying this song is cool. It's you should it's cool or whatever. But I'm also
I really
not
like
going
this one. This one's my favorite.
Right. I'm also not going. That reminds me of a story. I'm going to tell in a second. But then I also don't want to go deep into like just a super music theory rant. I'll have little moments in my thing, but I try to keep it pretty accessible for the most part for anyone, so they can maybe learn a little bit about music while learning about more of the behind the scenes or the interpretations of their favorite video game music. So I'm really trying to kind of I'm still finding it. I've only done 2 videos so far, but trying to find that perfect middle ground for people who love music, love video game music, but also just love the game, who will also go, I want to learn more about the music. Yeah. That's why in my Donkey Kong video, then that one, I talked about, I defined a leitmotif, and I defined very kind of basic musical terms that somebody who's not in music may not know, but can still understand from one simple definition. And that was recurring throughout the soundtrack. So I was able to bring that up and kind of inform and educate, but without getting super technical. So I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited for the next one. The next one's coming out in April. And then the one after that, Weston, that I won't even tell you yet, at least not while we're recording. I think is one I think there's 2 that I'm going to do this year. I'm doing 4 this year. I think there's 2 that you're going to really appreciate this year. This one in particular, it's another Nintendo one, but after that, I think there's going to be one that you'll appreciate because I know there's 2 games I'm covering that you and I both have a shared love of.
So if we're talking about that sort of retro era, the one that's going to be near and dear to my heart is if you touch Spyro. If you touch the Spyro soundtrack, that's the one I would like to see.
Let me be honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you. Spyro just made it under the cut. It was... Okay. Which means 2025 is what that means. Because what I did is I did a list of like 10, maybe it was like 8, 9, or 10, something like that. Spyro was on there, and I thought I'm going to do, I laid out my whole schedule for the year, and I thought, realistically, with all my projects, and I want to focus on my composition freelance, I can do probably 4. Because it takes me about 7 weeks to do a VGM Quest project beginning to end. And if I work on it consistently. So I thought, okay, I'll do 4. Let me do the 4 that I want to do. And I also kind of thought a little bit about my audience too. Like, I always did soundtracks I liked, but I thought, okay, let's get some variants. I don't want to be just Nintendo soundtracks. I like lots of games. Nintendo music just happens to be really freaking good a lot of the time. So it's like, I'm going to kind of gravitate towards that anyway.
Yeah.
So but other soundtracks have great music too. Like Spyro does have a great soundtrack. That's why it almost made it. And there's a few other ones as well that I will not share yet. But yeah, I'm super excited, and I think you'll just appreciate them even more because you'll have more of a connection to some of those. So I've talked a lot about VGM Quest. Let's change the topic. Let's talk about.
We were kind of just talking about creative projects where we do writing. So
I felt like I was just advertising for like 20 minutes. But
we've been from the beginning of this episode where I was talking about my book I wrote. We have done nothing but advertise ourselves.
We're just talking shop, right? That's all we're doing. We're just talking shop.
We're just talking shop, workshop.
Nothing wrong with that. Well, what else we got? Spyro, though, seriously, does have a great soundtrack. It was composed by the drummer of the Police, who I'm also a big Police fan. He composed the music for it. And what I love, too, about that is that you could hear it. I could hear some of those elements, those very kind of like post-punk 80s elements in the soundtrack that may not make any sense to you, but it makes sense to me in my head. And it but then what I also love is that I played the Reignited trilogy, and you can choose to play the original soundtrack, or you can choose to play the remixed or the remastered. I always do the original. I love the original soundtrack. It's incredible. So it is coming in 2025.
And to be fair, the Reignited has good music in it too. Just obviously, if you played the OG, that's got a special place in my heart. Actually, I've been meaning to bust that because I've played all of the Reignited trilogies all the way through. I've like 100%ed it, but I need to break it back out and play it again. I'm ready. I'm like, I gotta go play all the trilogy. I was going to do that when the Reignited trilogy came out on my Magic Man Mo YouTube channel. Just keep advertising the things we do.
Right on.
I was thinking about doing that like every December. I'm just gonna play the entire Reignited trilogy on stream. I didn't do that, but that
sounds fun.
I want to make it a not ritual, not a habit, tradition. Make it like a tradition or something. And I never did, but
I always associate the wintertime for me. Wintertime, I mean, I think it's because I'm usually indoors more. It gets dark early. That's when I always get knee deep in like big sprawling RPGs. That's for me. That's the perfect time to do it. It's like you start playing at like 6 p.m. It's already dark outside. You know, I always like to have an IPA. Got my beer with me. Sometimes it'll be a hot cocoa even if I really want to feel wintry. But then I'll like get into like a really just like long, 60-hour RPG or whatever. And that's comforting for me. And then usually throughout the other parts of the year, that's not always true. I sometimes romanticize that. Like this particular winter, I wasn't really feeling it. So I was playing a bunch of like shorter games. Sure. But in general, that's what I like to do. Oh, I was going to tell you, I'm a year late to the game. Okay. But I got into Hogwarts Legacy. So I knew that you played it when it came out, at least for a while.
Yeah, I played quite a bit of it, and then I shelved it because I got busy, and I haven't been back to it. But I did a lot of exploration, and that I didn't do a lot of story, really. Okay. I did a lot of wandering the world.
Interesting. Okay, so because I got it when it came out, and you know how it goes. You get busy, just like you said. And I played like the tutorial, and then I maybe did like one like main quest and like at Hogwarts, and then I just was done. And that was literally a year ago because it came out around a year ago. And then I picked it back up because I haven't been playing it. I haven't played a game for a little bit, or at least any kind of big game. I mean, like that that can last a while. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I got this. I want to play it. And let me tell you something. I'm really impressed with how. I remember everybody was impressed with how overall like good it was. I think a lot of people were like, I'm kind of surprised. Like, well, this game's actually pretty dang good. I know a lot of people are kind of saying, what's it going to be like? It's a licensed blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Ended up being, in my opinion, good. I think the world is super immersive. I think, and that could partially just be because it's a very rich world to begin with that a lot of us, especially our age, kind of already know about because Harry Potter was so many of our childhoods. But very immersive. I think the story I played through, I haven't done a lot of exploring yet. I've done about 15 hours of some exploring and a lot of just immersing myself in the story. And I'm totally into it. And I think it's one of the best game stories so far that I've played in a long time. It's so funny. I'm not in any other game for some reason. I'm not the explorer type, really. I don't like to just wander around and do nothing. I like to kind of get to the story and do the things. Be in it, yeah.
And in Hogwarts Legacy, so you earn your experience points by you not just grinding and murdering things. I mean, there's combat, obviously, but anything in that sort of journal or whatever it was called that you can do earns you experience. And you can level up and you get better gear and stuff like that. And I was doing all of the things where you're just finding the different little hidden areas, solving the little puzzles, unlocking the different little scenes and things to find. I was doing all of that all throughout. I was just literally exploring the entire castle. I'm on the grounds. I wandered over to Hogsmeade. Once I got to Hogwarts, it was hours. Many hours before I did the next story mission. And all I was doing was just finding things and solving puzzles to the point where it's like I was like vastly over leveled for when I came back and started doing the story stuff. I'm like wearing all this like crazy gear that I just found in the world and chests and things. And I'm like, I don't think I'm playing this game right.
I do like...
Because by the time I finally got to actual combat, I'm like... Oh, yeah, there's combat in this game. I've just been wandering around.
Well, it rewards you for it. I love the games that do that because I've always, one of the game genres I really grew up on, and a lot of us did when in the early 3D days, was kind of like those like collect-a-thon kind of games.
Yeah.
Like games were like, even if there's another gameplay element, a lot of those games that you and I both played, it was like, okay, you can jump around, but then like also there's always hidden collectibles you can find. And I don't know if I'm just drawn to that because of my childhood or what, but like this game really rewards that because I remember same thing. I remember like there was a mission that brought you to Hogsmeade at one point, and I remember that I went there, and I was supposed to kind of go to a couple different shops and do a few things to get started. Early mission, but the first thing I did was like I went outside of town, like in like the backyards of like some of these like homes and stuff, and there's chests that you can open up, and there's all kinds of cool things and. They're just chests, but I don't know. It's fun. I like being able to go somewhere and like, oh, I I get something for this, and and that's what helps you level up, and you can
that
unlock
game is
things
just
and
chock full of that stuff where like every nook and cranny's got something squirreled away to find. I think you're absolutely right. Those collectathon games that we like grew up on where it's like you got to get the 100 coins, you got to find all the letters of a character's name, or you got to, all this other just random stuff. And it's like, I'm just playing the collectathon, eventually I'll get to the regular game, but piece of candy. Oh, piece of candy. I just keep finding things everywhere.
It's super fun.
That was a lot of fun. It's a shame that it was, when it came out, it was embroiled in all that J.K. Rowling controversy where people were like banning the game and being all crazy because people were angry at J.K. Rowling for, I don't even remember what she said. She said something controversial or something. And it's like, she didn't make the game. Like what I mean? She had nothing to do with making the game. She just owns the IP to Harry Potter. You can't change that.
Right.
So anyway, I remember that being a whole thing because I was going to stream the game. Actually, I did. I streamed the game once. When I stream popular games, it's hilarious how hit and miss it can be. Either it's a super popular stream and I'm getting all kinds of new people, or not a soul shows up because like it's an oversaturated market. Everyone else is playing it, so like I don't show up. It's so hit or miss, water or fire. So that was one of them where I was streaming Hogwarts Legacy. And I was having some performance issues, so that didn't help. But like, not a soul is like watching this stream. Like, okay, I won't stream it again. I'll just play it on my own. So that's what I did. I was just playing it on my own. It's like, okay, that's fine. That happens. But
well, I've learned since I've become pretty much solely for new games a PC gamer. Some games just will not run well anyway. And I know for me, like, and I never really had that concept in my head of like, I know my computer is fine enough to do this at like medium or high settings, if not more, depending on the game. Why is it still running like crap? And then I learned quickly
some games just aren't optimized,
Some games are not optimized. Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, Hogwarts Legacy, for me, it's buttery smooth. I can run it at high mixed with ultra for certain things on 1080p, except when I get the school itself.
Yeah.
It's not the frame rate isn't the issue. It gets stuttery. Oh. Do you remember it getting stuttery for you?
Well, I played it like on launch, and on launch it had some issues in general. Okay. So I don't know. I'm sure a lot of those have been fixed by now. I'd have to open the game now and see if I'm still having the same issues. I had a lot of things just not loading in all the way, or things being kind of like, stuttery, like, kind of just little idiosyncrasies, things not quite loading in or whatever. So, or running a little bit slow from time to time. I don't know. Right. I don't remember. It's been a while.
I know that I definitely couldn't stream a game like that though, because of all the things I have running at the same time for me to stream properly would just max out like my CPU, because I got to have Streamlabs open. I got to have Streamlabs open, which is fine. But then I also have to have my digital audio workstation open, which is a huge load on my CPU. And then I'm, of course, streaming the game, which utilizes my video card and my CPU and stuff and all that. So, like, I can only imagine. I remember I tried to stream Lawn Mowing Simulator once, which surprising when it came out was not optimized well at all. And I remember I couldn't get past maybe 5 or 6 frames. It was buttery smooth until I opened up my audio workstation and then stream, because that's how I get my audio out for me, how I do it. And then all of a sudden it was like 6 or 7 frames. It looked like I was just watching pictures change on a screen very slowly as soon as I started streaming and doing all that at the same time. As soon as I closed out of it again, then it was back to smooth again. It was wild.
I would say, do you happen to know if you have, do you use NVIDIA? Do you have the NVIDIA Game Booster enabled?
I mean, I have like Game Booster.
Because that would be something.
I don't know what that is. I have the control panel and stuff.
NVIDIA has a thing called NVIDIA Game Booster, and what it's supposed to do, this is something. This was what I was streaming. I was streaming SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, and I was streaming that game because they remastered it, and I was playing that game and streaming it and having a great time, all kinds of fun, blah blah blah. Then one day I went to stream it, and it was running like absolute garbage. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. I'm like, my computer should be able to run this. Everything's looking great on stream. What's going on? This game's running like hot garbage. Well, I had an NVIDIA update, and it turned on my NVIDIA Game Booster. And what that does is basically when you're playing a game, it tries to suppress everything else on your computer to dedicate as much of your resources to playing that game, so you can play on like max settings and stuff. Problem being, I had at the time I was still using OBS, and I had it set to priority to make sure that I could stream. So it's set to priority. So it's trying to take resources. Game Booster's trying to take resources from OBS. So they're fighting each other. And it made my entire computer, while trying to run both programs at the same time, just an absolute mess. Because like I was getting frustrated. I couldn't figure out what was wrong. I had to call the stream early. Like, guys, tech issues. I'm out of my element. I can't figure it out.
Sure.
Shut down the stream, turn off OBS, game runs like a goddamn charm. I'm like, are you kidding me? What's going on? And so I finally figured out what was going on. I'm like, I got to turn that off if I'm streaming. So I don't know if that's something that you got to look into too. Like if you're opening, OBS, your audio interface, if you're doing all that stuff, you probably don't want to have your game booster on. You just want to make sure you're running at settings that you can run at, even if you have to bump down a setting, like go instead of high graphics to medium or something. But
I need to see if I have that on to begin with. Would I find that in the GeForce Experience app or whatever?
Yeah, it should be in your GeForce Experience.
I'm curious now. I know we're
just thought I would share that because it's like,
I'll look into that.
That confounded me one stream, and I was like,
I guess that makes sense.
I really didn't know what to do. I was like, I guess my computer can't handle this game, and then I stopped the stream, and all of a sudden, like magic, I could handle the game. I'm like, what is going on?
That's crazy. That very well could be it. I will look into that. Huh. For next time, I do want to stream like a nicer game. Because I thought, God, I know like some of like the pro streamers, they like, who have the monies, they'll have like a streaming computer, and then they'll have their gaming computer. They'll link them up that way. That'll happen, so they can just for optimum performance and all that stuff. And it's like, I'm not really going to be able to do that. So I got one computer.
You run multiple graphics cards, and you're just you can get really crazy.
Yeah, how does that
if you know what you're doing? I don't know.
Can you run more than one graphics card at the same time for like a game?
Yes. Asterisk mark. No.
I have no idea how that works. Because I always wondered that though. Because like for example, I'm assuming yours does too. Like I've got 2 slots.
Yeah, like I've got a space to put another graphics card, but I don't know how that works.
Like I have no idea how it works either. I'd be curious.
I might try it for giggles because I'm thinking about upgrading. I've got a 2080 in my computer, and I've been thinking about upgrading to like not the 4080 unless I can get it cheap enough. I actually don't know how expensive they were. They were really expensive at one point in time, but they're also massive. So I was thinking about upgrading to a 3080 or something like that anyway, just as a little upgrade. I also want to upgrade my CPU. I basically want to rebuild my computer because I'm afraid my CPU is getting old and just needs to be changed. But anyway,
what do you have in there for your CPU? What do you got now?
I don't remember. AMD Ryzen something.
Oh, if it's it's AMD, I don't know much about that.
Yeah, I've got an AMD something. Hang on. Hang on. This PC. I typed in mine and immediately knew what. Nope, that's not what I'm looking for. Hang on. How do I find that?
Type in info. I think it comes up. System information is what it's called.
System information. That's probably it. Yeah. Here we go. Where are you at?
It's the AMD The
AMD dot. Oh, did I miss it? I didn't see it. Here we go. AMD Ryzen 7 2700 8-core processor. I would like to go to a 16-core. That would be really fun.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I'm trying to think. I think mine's a 10-core. Yeah, so I'm an Intel guy. So like I didn't know what that compares to. Like if it compares to like an i7 or an i9 or something. My CPU, really everything in my computer. I also built my computer a couple years after you, but everything in mine's good. I mean, I recently upgraded to a 3060, but for me, since I'm not really concerned about streaming that much and like playing I want an okay gaming experience, I'm fine with a 3060. And it works fine for video editing too. But I know that my processor, I'm looking to be sure, but yeah, it's an i9. It's a 10-core. I love this thing. It was brand new when I got it. And I've got it overclocked a little bit too, but it's got 20 logical cores. I don't know what that means. I don't know that much enough about it to really know. I know what cores are, but I don't know what logical cores are.
Yeah, I don't know the difference. You start to get a little too technical, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool.
Right. Yeah. But I'm happy with what I've got, at least for now. I've got 32 gigs of RAM, but it's one stick, and I've been told that there's some benefits to having separate sticks, even if I got like two
really?
16s or whatever. I have heard there's benefits to how memory is distributed in terms of its speed and stuff. I don't claim to know the specific details, but
I like how you like don't stream, but you probably have a more powerful PC than me.
I've got a good setup.
I've only got 16 gigs of RAM.
But for a lot of things, the 16's still fine.
16's still fine.
I got a good deal on the 32.
Right. I stream video games, and video games can be really intense on your computer, and then streaming is really intense. So it's like,
yeah,
it's funny that like I should probably have more RAM.
I will say though, the nice thing with like Premiere, well, you can kind of choose if you want Premiere, like especially when you're doing some intensive work, if you want it to focus more on your CPU or your GPU, you can choose like the hardware acceleration stuff, which is cool.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for me, though, probably because of my setup, even with my 3060, like, because I know like a 3060 is quite a few steps down from an 80, but it's like 4K editing really isn't a big deal at all. Like, as long as I have the file, like, on one of my SSDs, and I know that because I do 4K editing on a computer that has much lesser specs at in the office when I go in there, and it chugs and it's trying to keep up. But true raw 4K footage on this thing is like, it's not bad at all. So at least I still get use out of it. That 32, I had such a good deal on it. I could have gotten 16, or I could have gotten like the 32 stick for like $10 more. Then I'll just get 32. It's future-proof.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, I don't know the difference either between the 60s and the 80s or any of that. Because like I looked it up because I knew you had a 2080, and because I just bought my 3060 a few months ago. And I remember I looked it up, and like honestly, a 2080, which is much older, in some categories, still beats out my 3060, which is much newer. So it's kind of interesting. In some categories, it doesn't, but like in other ways, like it's still like right up with what I bought. Now the difference is the 80s do cost a lot more than the 60s do. You know, it comes at a price. Obviously, I got I think the 3060 for like, I don't know, $350. It's a mid-range card. You know, like I'm not looking for like because I'm assuming the 2080 when you got it was probably one of the most expensive parts of your get up.
Yeah, it was. I don't for the life of me remember what I paid for it, but yeah, it was one of, if not the most expensive one component of my computer. So
right.
I don't remember what I paid for it. It was probably in the same range, like $300-400 at the time.
You can stick with AMD for your processor, or are you gonna become an Intel boy like me?
Well, because it's funny with like my laptops, because this is my PC I have now is the first PC that I actually built myself, and before that it was just laptops, just prefab laptops. But I was always an Intel guy up until I went to go build my PC, and at the time, for my budget, what I was looking at, I was comparing Intel and AMD, and it just so happened that at the time, I don't remember what Intel I was comparing this one to, but at the time I was like, actually AMD's getting better reviews. They're very similar, but AMD's actually kind of getting a better rep at the time, and I've not really used AMD. You know what? I'm feeling spicy. I'm feeling risky. Let's give AMD a shot, and I've been very happy with it.
And they're usually a little bit on the cheaper side too.
Sometimes, but yeah, I think it did. At the time, I think mine was a little bit cheaper, but getting the better reviews. So I was like,
right,
okay, that makes it an easier risk a little bit. I just wasn't familiar with AMD at all, what their string of numbers meant, but I've been happy with it. So I think if I beef up my current PC, I'd probably stick to AMD just because that's what I'm already using on this one. I don't know.
Well, plus that could affect your motherboard too. Not to get all into the computer stuff.
It could. I know
be compatible.
Yeah, I know much less about motherboards, so that would be a whole nother issue if I end up getting something that's not compatible. It's like, never mind, now I have to buy a new motherboard. Oh, never mind, now I just bought a bunch of parts. We're building a new computer.
I know. My lifesaver is, I think it's called PC Part Picker. I think that's what it's called. That is my lifesaver because you can plug in any piece and it'll tell you exactly what's compatible with it and what's not. I love it. Love that website. If you're going to build your own computer, that's where you should go, everybody. PC Part Picker.
I have to remember what my motherboard even is.
I know mine's an Asus, but that's about all I know. I only remember that because I just saw it recently because I had to take it all apart.
I at least know what Asus is. So when I bought my motherboard, I was being risky. I had never heard of it. It's an Aorus. X470 Aorus. I know.
I've heard of that.
When the computer boots up, it's got like a leopard or something on it. Some kind of big cat logo or whatever. Which is still hilarious because my SSD that like failed on me and took down my computer with me, I actually didn't take it out of my computer. It's still in my computer. So when I boot my computer with the new drive, it recognizes that I have a failed drive in my computer and it tries to repair it. So I hit spacebar to skip that.
You're like, trust me, buddy, you're not going to be able to fix this.
I know. I'm like, you won't fix it. You'll just be here forever. Because it's like, attempting fix, 1% complete, whatever number files out of 300,000 files. I'm like, you're not going to, it's not going to happen.
I just want to try, Weston. I just want to try. I promise you, man. You're not going to fix it.
I should have dug that drive out when I had my computer open, but I had just got my graphics card back in, and it's a pain in the butt to get off out of the motherboard. So I was just like, I'll just leave it. What's the worst that could happen?
I totally get it. Why not? All right. Well, I guess what do we talk about?
That was our tech talk.
Yeah, we talked tech. We talked our projects we're working on. We kind of covered a lot. It was a nice cash episode, as I say.
Yeah.
And any parting words, Weston?
4 limes are better
7 years
than
ago.
2 lemons.
I thought you were going to say 4 limes and 7 years ago.
4 limes and 7 years ago. My great forefather, not just my forefather, he was a great man. Master of all things lime.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's kind of from like Tennessee, and then later on he had a friend come who's from a different state. Can't remember the state, didn't know him too well. But anyway, we were just kind of talking about where we're all from, just casually. And I remember like, Tennessee, and a lot of other states are kind of known for something. They've got culture, there's and then I said, well, I'm from a state you never think about, and it's called, I'm from Illinois. And not Chicago, Illinois, that we had that whole
Chicago.
talk. And like,
yeah.
And then, because Chicago, that's got the culture, that's got the identity, but
Chicago
Illinois
is
doesn't.
Its own thing. Yeah.
Right. Ask any Illinois, and it's Illinois versus Chicago. Anyway, so I'm like, we got Abe Lincoln. He's from there. That's pretty cool, right?
Land of Lincoln.
It's the land of Lincoln. You can
Land of Lincoln.
You got to go to that Lincoln Museum in Springfield. Anyway, I just thought that was kind of funny. It's like, we don't really have much. We got corn and we got Lincoln.
We got corn. We got farms. There you go. That's it. That's the entirety. That's all of it.
Weston.
I'm wistfully looking over at my window like, that's it. That's Illinois.
That's it. That's my life.
Just beyond that window, Illinois.
Hey, speaking of jumping out a window, Weston, where can people find you on the internet?
I have a website, westonhasty.com. You can go there to find all of my things except my book, because I haven't updated my website. Maybe by the time this episode comes out, I'll get on that.
Smack. Yeah.
I'll have to fix that. westonhasty.com to find all of my things. I stream games on YouTube on Magic Man Mo. I write poetry. We talked about it at the top of the podcast. It's Smiling for the Sky on Amazon if you want to check that out. I have other writing works in the works. So that's what I'm going to promote. Say hi to me on Twitter if you would like, at Weston Hasty. Alex,
I like what you did.
Where do we find
you did there? Oh, sorry. You know what I noticed tonight? I want to say we have a greater delay than usual, because I found myself thinking that like you were done, like speaking, or maybe it's not a delay thing. Maybe I'm just interrupting worse than usual. Either way, I'm sorry. I keep
don't
you
be.
off.
I just keep talking. Like I'll slow down and stop, and then I just keep talking anyway. Don't worry about it. I just do that.
That's right, Weston. It's you this time. It's not me.
It was always me. It was always me. I just don't shut up.
It doesn't help that I also am an interrupter, and I've learned that from meeting people who don't interrupt, because then I feel like, oh God, I'm an asshole. That's what it feels like.
Maybe that's the Illinois thing. I do that too. Maybe that's the Illinois thing. Our inner Chicago comes out, and we just start talking over people.
Chicago. That's what it's got to be.
Chicago.
Okay, so you can find me. Since you plugged your book, I'll plug kind of what I talked about. Head over to YouTube and type in VGM Quest. It'll be the first thing that comes up. And by the time this comes out, my Super Mario 64 soundtrack retrospective will be just about out. So look forward to that. If you're a Nintendo fan, you're likely a Mario fan, and I think you'll appreciate it. I know I do. I talk about how the Super Mario 64 soundtrack really captures a feeling of childlike wonder and imagination that a lot of soundtracks can't really seem to encapsulate. So anyway, check that out. Profoundish. You can find us at Profoundish Pod on all the social media platforms. Come say hello to us there. You can also continue the conversation with us in the YouTube comments. If you're watching on YouTube, you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place you get your podcast. And more importantly, show us your love. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Gross.
Show us your love by liking, leaving a review, leaving a 5-star review, or any star, but if it's not 5, we'll be upset about it. That really helps the podcast grow and get us out to new faces who want to see our faces. And everybody knows the world wants to see more of our faces.
Or out to more ears that want to hear our mouths.
Weston did the right thing. He swooped in and said, remember, Alex, some people just listen. He's a smart man, and that's why he's here.
We are a podcast. Viewing is not necessary, but you can. You can watch us on Spotify and YouTube, or you can listen to us anywhere.
Yeah, you could listen, and then you could check out the video version. And if you could, these guys are ugly. It's fine. You can go back and listen. We're always gonna be audio.
Yeah. So we can't fix the ugly, but you can. You can just listen to the audio.
But you can. Close your eyes.
Close your eyes. Lean back. Don't fall asleep. You're listening to my podcast.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to head out. We're going to go do some writing and build a computer. And until next time.
All right.